15% of our population are leaders and 85% are followers. When you have the wrong people in a top management position, you can't achieve the best out of your organization. Sometimes in bad times, you need strong leaders, people who can point with a full hand and say, do this, do that. Everybody have to do their best now, work really hard. I mean, during wartime and everything, you need somebody who's crystal clear, who doesn't dare to actually, to make an omelette and so on and so forth. But it doesn't work in good times, maybe, because everybody knows what they're doing. Nobody needs to do this. So if you tell people, you have to do this, I'm already doing it, you're going to annoy them as hell, So technical term, sorry. So there's not one way to do it. The only way to have one person throughout the whole economical cycle would probably to have some sort of chameleon kind of hybrid person, probably with all kind of personality traits. I haven't met that individual. If that person exists, it's probably a woman.
Welcome to Anatomy of a Leader, a video podcast that shows you that there are many faces of leadership, that perfection doesn't and shouldn't exist, and that making mistakes or taking detours can often lead to deep insights about your superpowers. My name is Maria Vorostovsky. I'm a headhunter and founder of HVO Search, and I help ambitious leaders hire the most in-demand, high-potential C-suite talent. Each week, let me take you on a journey to discover what leadership truly is and how you too can get to the very top. And in the meantime, help us reach 1,000 subscribers, hit that red subscribe button below and the bell icon so you don't miss a single episode. This show will challenge the way you think and may even change your life. Thomas, such a pleasure to have you on the show. I was just telling you just now how excited I am to be speaking with you finally. I was traveling to Greece and I was in the airport bookshop and I was just looking through some things to read on the plane. And I saw this very colorful book with a very intriguing title. And I thought that sounds exactly what I need right now. And of course, you're the best-selling author of the book called Surrounded by Idiots, which is based on the DISC personality model and something that I'm actually personally a fan of and really follow and just think it offers brilliant insights. But the way that you have, done the color code and explained in very clear, vivid ways of how different people interact with each other and how each and every one of us does at times face a moment when we just think we're surrounded by idiots. Well, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. And I guess my first question to you is, what made you come up with that title? Why Surrounded by Idiots?
Firstly, thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it. Well, the title is actually a phrase. I mean, we all been in that situation, right? Sitting in a meeting, looking at everybody else, thinking, am I the only one who understands this? Am I the only one who can see this clearly? And, leaving the meeting thinking you're surrounded by idiots. The title actually came from an entrepreneur I was coaching many, many years ago. As a young man, I was, let's say, a bit less smarter than I am today. I were kind of straightforward then too, but not in a bright way. So I challenged him, and he actually used that phrase, idiots here, idiots there, idiots everywhere. He said he was surrounded by idiots, and the only thing I could come up with was to ask him who brought in all the idiots, and that was it. So the phrase kind of got stuck in my mind. And I said to myself, if I'm going to write a book in the future, it's going to have this title. And yes, I actually did that. So.
And what color was he?
He was actually super red and super blue at the same time, which made him very task-oriented, extremely, well, uninterested in human relations, to be honest. He had a family, but he lived for his job and for his companies. So, and that we noticed that actually he was kind of helpful, but he wasn't much into dealing with human being and emotions and feelings and soft things there. That was messy for him. So he struggled for sure.
It's funny. That's exactly my type too. Red and blue.
Yes. you have the insight. He didn't. He had no self-insight whatsoever.
I mean, I
So
have to
I
say that
think it's
I've been faced with certain situations where I had to bring myself back and think, what am I doing and why am I behaving in such a way? And I think this is what your book really talks about is exactly that point about self-awareness, about understanding not only other people, but before you really go that far, you need to understand yourself first and how you are triggered, what, how you like to be communicated with, and what really kind of gets your goat, something that really irritates you. Would you say, going back to the reason for your book, would you say that this book was directed at the Reds? Because for me, it almost felt that it was speaking to me directly. And I don't know how other people perceive it, other colors, would they take that in the same way? But I felt like you were directly talking to me through this book.
well, I think you are. We don't know each other very well yet. To be honest, Maria, the thing is, it doesn't depend on your color. A lot of people say exactly what you said. It felt like you were talking directly to me because you were paying attention. You were sort of in the moment that you took in everything and you registered what was on the pages, and that's why you feel like this. I mean, the interest for human personalities, human behavior, and for communication skills, that isn't to find found in within any color at all. It could be red, yellow, green, or blue. Doesn't matter. But when you are interested, when you like to learn more, and when you like to develop yourself, let's say, then you will recognize more in the text than if you just see, it's a book somebody told me, and yeah, well, I read it on an airplane and went threw it away. I don't know, didn't resonate with me at all. But in your case, it did. I don't think it has to do with reddish or bluish or anything else. I think it has to do with your interest. What do you think?
I mean, for sure, whenever you're interested in anything that you really, you already go deeper in that because there's something in your brain that you're trying to search for a solution or for an answer. And I think people who are predisposed to being self-aware, they go out of their way to learn more, which means that they're curious about themselves, but then they're also curious about other people. So for sure, if you're more open and more curious, then you will get a lot more out of it. I suppose, how do you get people who are not that curious to take this on board?
That's an excellent question. How do I make people interested in the topic when they are actually not there at all? That's very hard. It's impossible to you can drag the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. It is like that. I can't. I mean, here in Sweden, and I'm not saying this to brag. I have been in lots of newspapers here because the book has sold 1 million copies only in Sweden. And 1 million copies is a lot. I'm not saying this to impress you, but to impress upon you that 9 million Swedes didn't read the book. So most people doesn't care. And that is kind of the case, regardless the topic. I guess the only thing you can do, whatever it is that you're presenting to the world, the only thing that you actually can do is to make it as interesting and as valuable as you possibly can. You will get some fans, you will get some haters, and a lot of people in between. And it is what it is. I don't think you can. I believe in Simon Sinek's way to look at it. If you do what you're good at, if you do things the best you can, you will attract the right people who believe what you believe in. I'm not going all Simon Sinek over here, but it is true. If you can explain why this is important, you will have some followers. They will come to you and they will say, this is interesting. And you will have some people who just doesn't care at all, and that's life, I guess. I have I'm living by this now. I can only do things that interest me. So I'm writing about idiots and psychopaths and bad bosses and so on and so forth. And some people like it and some people don't care, and it is what it is.
Hmm.
What can
Where
I
does
tell you?
this where does this fascination come from you?
Uh, well, as a young man in starting my own business career, let's call it, I'm an ex-banker, and I was really struggling because I had well, I guess I was interested in other people, you could say, but I wasn't paying attention. I didn't notice what people were saying. I was a poor listener. I always been a good talker, let's say. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's a bloody curse, to be honest. And I didn't pay attention to my surroundings, and it got me in trouble time after time after time. And after my first management position, I had to go to my manager and say, Take me out of this equation. I don't know what I'm doing." Of course, he said, "Well, you better stay put, Sonny, because your manager is even worse than you are. She's not even there." And the HR department brought me up and said, "Hey, how about doing this personality assessment? What do you say?" And I took the test, and they told me this is what other people are perceiving when they meet you. That was mostly bad news because it was 100% correct. It was on the spot, and it kind of gave me the creeps because I said, "Is this what they see? Is this what they hear?" And they said, "Are you willing to do some personal development?" And I said, I better. So for me, I was kind of, it didn't start, let's say, intentionally, but it threw me in that corner. I said, "Well, it's up to you now." So I took the bait, let's call it, and I haven't stopped learning ever since. And for me,
Mm.
that's good.
Isn't it funny how certain things that happen, particularly the mistakes or something that isn't necessarily a positive experience, and they can completely change the course of your direction where you're going and actually leads you to where you need to go. And I mean, I find that aspect fascinating and how that's impacted your life and career and leading you up to writing this book. Which personality type are you?
Well,
Yes.
well, I have lots of red in me. The highest bar is red, and the second highest bar is blue. Actually, they're equally, 82%. And I have plenty of yellow and no green whatsoever. I do apologize to everybody who's watching this. I don't know what happened. But that is what it is. And of course, then there is my drive. There are my drivers, my motivational things in the background, which tells me why I do certain things. I mean, the colors, the behavior, the disc profile can only describe what you do, how you do it, and what you're doing. It doesn't tell you good enough why you do it, and so therefore you need the drivers as well. And I have a practical economical driver, which means I like result. I need to achieve a result. I can work really, really hard, but if it doesn't lead anywhere, if I see no clear direction, I lose. I lose my focus immediately. So for me, spending time with, according to myself, useless things, let's say, that's why I don't watch TV, for instance, very much. I prefer to read a book. I prefer to listen to interesting people. I prefer to listen to podcasts where I can learn new stuff. Not because I like to learn, that's another driver, but because can I use this? Can I integrate this in my regular work, so to speak? And for me, that's fascinating. There's so many things to learn. So a lot of people are doing the same thing, acting in the same way, but for different reasons. And that's what the drivers can tell us.
Mm. And from the conversation that you had saying, well, this is your personality type and this is how other people perceive you, what changes did you make as a result of that?
Uh, what I most did was I trained myself to be a better listener. I really did not listen to other people. I remember I was pretty young. I was at this time 25, 26 something. As I'm 56 now, that's really young for me. So I was kind of in the beginning of my career, and so. But the point is, what I also figured was that I needed some kind of direction. I needed some kind of path to put myself on, because everything I did was just coincidental. I had no plan. I jumped on my first management position because I met a woman, and I moved 1,000 kilometers. For me, that's not a good reason enough these days. I need a better reason. But that was it. So I just kind of stumbled into the next step of my career, and there was no plan. So besides from being a better listener, practicing active listening let's say, I started to sort of plan my life a little bit because I realized there's not only bad stuff in my personality profile, there's also lots of good things. I just don't know how to use them. I just don't know how to use my let's say inner capabilities to do good. For instance, I didn't know how to help other people the best possible way because I couldn't see it. So for me, it was before it was just it was an it was an non-issue, let's call it. I just didn't think about it. I just went home and took off my shoes and turned on the telly and that was it. Then I did, dressed in the morning and went to work. No plan. No, I was not there, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
It put me on track. I have to consider things. I have to ponder, where am I going?
Mm-hmm.
I'm still curious where I'm going, but I'm sort of conscious about it.
There's something about intentionality and really thinking not only about yourself in terms of what you're good at, what your skills are, but where do you want to go and how do you want to utilize the skills? And the other thing that reinforces my view of strengths is that there is this duality to them. So, for example, a red is very dominant, very outspoken, very action orientated, they get things done. But at the same time, they can be when it's taken too far, it's aggressive, it's abrupt, it's insensitive, it's not putting people first at all, not caring about feelings, not being empathetic. So it's a strength when used in the right way, but then it becomes a weakness when it's either overused or used in the wrong context, or when it's pushed too far. And yeah, and when you're talking about discovering your strengths on what you're good at, and finally paying attention, um, I think that's something that is it's proven to kind of get you closer to your goal, your destination, but you also need to know where you're going. So,
We need to know where we're going, and strangely enough, Maria, the thing is, these days I am coaching entrepreneurs all over Europe, CEOs, chairmen and chairwomen, obviously, and you just if you knew how many people really talented, really well experienced, and let's say, well, successful in many ways, still struggling. Where am I going with this? It's even almost weird to realize how far people can take themselves without really knowing why.
mm,
And for me, that's kind of it's an aha moment, but it's also an oh no moment. Where would I have been if I had paid attention, if I had been aware, if I had been sort of in the present, making plans and taking it step by step by step by step, instead of just dragging my body into the office and see if I'd survive the day. It's okay, a little bit of exaggeration, I know, but the thing is, so many people still in 2022 is kind of going full speed in no particular direction and still succeeding in many ways. What could they accomplish if they had this crystal clear goal, let's say, or some
mm.
really good objective? It's fascinating, isn't it? I believe it's really fascinating.
I would totally agree with you, because when I'm coaching my clients and very senior people in the industry, and I'm still boggled to see how they can create a business plan, but yet when it comes to a personal plan, it's really difficult. And I wonder if there's partly to do with the fact that you are focused on another business to actually lead it, rather than you know really embodying all of those principles of the business and actually applying them to yourself, or even sometimes being in a company that you're not aligned with the values of the business, and yet you're, through the sheer power of determination and getting things done, then you just kind of go for it. um, I do have a follow-up question on that, and I wonder, through your experience, do you find that leaders fall into a certain type more than others?
In terms of personality, short or long answer? Well, the short answer is yes. most, no, not most, but overrepresented would be the red factor, the dominant factor. I saw your smile there, actually. The thing is this, the red factor is helping you lead it because you are you're kind of willing to take some risks. You're willing to put yourself out there. You're really willing to go out of your way to achieve something. You are result driven. You are kind of competitive, and you have sharper elbows than most. So it's not a coincidence. A lot of red people end up leading a team or a company or a whole corporation or country or whatever. That is not strange at all. Are they the best leaders? That's another story. We don't know because so many other factors matters here. The least common leader that I can see, and here Sweden stands out a little bit, and I know this, the least common leader would be the green leader, not because they would be poor in leadership, but because they have no ambition whatsoever to lead other people, because they like cooperation. They like to get along, and to have a nice time and to be friends, which maybe isn't the best way to lead through hard times. Let's say if your company goes through lots of hardships, it's not going to help you to be friendly and nice, and polite. So there the red factor is, and I think extroversion is more common when it comes to leadership, which gives us red and yellow, obviously, because they are really good at formulating visionary plans, and pep talking people into doing really, really fantastic things. And again, I'm not saying you can't be an excellent leader while you're introvert, as in green or blue. I'm not saying that. But your question is, what do we see? We see more extroverted leaders. I think it's because they are kind of, let's say, they have an easier time to, well, they are kind of looking for opportunities and they are more active. Green and blue are more passive. Sometimes that is good because they're better at listening and analyzing things and pondering things, and go deeper using logic and all of these things. The extroverted types are more shooting from the hip and see where it takes them, and very often it helps actually. If they had the really good self-insight, self-awareness, they could be world-class leaders. But when they have a low self-awareness, they are disastrous for the organization, no doubt about it. I've seen so terrible leadership performed that it actually scares me. I would say we have 10% top performers when it comes to leadership and management. Well, let's say leadership, management is something else, obviously. 10%. Then you have 70% sort of average, sort of okay people. Then you have 20% who are so bad, so terrible at leadership, they shouldn't have gotten the position in the first place. They should be kicked out, actually. But they are still there and making life hard for everybody else. So that's my truth.
So why do they stay in those positions? Is it because the businesses don't recognize the fact that they're bad, or because they can't replace them with better people, or they don't know how to handle them? Like why are they still there? Especially if we know that they're not good leaders.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's a complicated question. Based on a complicated issue and complicated problems, they never have a simple solution. There's no yes or no answer here. I would say it could be a plethora of reasons. It could be a huge bunch of reasons. It could be that the boss above this person doesn't understand what's going on. He doesn't pay attention. She doesn't pay attention. It could be they're narcissistic, making everything look good, but still don't contribute at all. It could be the perks, so they are sort of hanging in there because they're trying to stay on board. It could be status, ego. It could be anything. It could be they are actually the best out of 10 really, really bad alternatives. Maybe the rest of the candidates are even worse. It could be several reasons. This is many years since I dropped the notion. I know what the answer is. In the beginning, I have to be straightforward here. In the beginning of my own coaching career, let's say for 20 years ago, I said, I know what you have to do. You have to do this, A, B, C, D, do this, and it's going to be great, and do that. And I realized that's usually not the case. You usually have to do a lot of things. This sounds a bit naive when I hear myself, I listen to myself, I understand that. But still, the answers are to be found in many places. It could be top management. I mean, water is always pouring downwards, right? If you have a lousy top management, you're not going to have an excellent middle management. That is just the way it is. And sometimes the bad people raise to the top, and well, what can I say?
Then we're in trouble.
Then we're all in trouble, and sometimes we are. Just
Mhm.
look around you, what the world looks like. I mean, it's not the best brains who has the most power. That is the sad truth.
So going back to your point earlier about, well, Reds are almost overrepresented within the leadership. Could we train? Could well, we, the world, the greens and the blues and the yellows? Can they? How can they get into leadership positions, and should they? And what we can do about them? That's a very kind of there's a lot of questions in there.
Yes, that's a lot of questions. The first question is, should we? Should we make other people than the existing bunch of leaders in the world, or managers or bosses? Again, I'm not going to use a cliche here, but leadership and management, again, you and I, we know this. A lot of people know this. It's not the same thing. But if we talk about leaders, people who actually do some good stuff there, should you? It's impossible. Again, most people do not want to be a leader. They don't want the responsibility. They do not want to work longer hours. They could identify with, let's say, the power it gives them. They could identify themselves, riding the Mercedes Benz and everything. They can see this. They could recognize all the perks. They can see the good stuff of the status and everything. But a lot of people don't have that ego. If you're an introvert, your ego tells you differently how you should perform your career. That is just the way it is. I think there's probably good leaders, good leadership material, let's say, out there, who's never have thought the thought, maybe I should apply for a top position or middle management position. Maybe I should do that, and still don't do it.
Mhm.
Uh,
But I wonder how much representation makes a difference. I mean, let's take women, for example. The fewer women that you see in leadership positions, the less likely women are to get there because you just don't see yourself being represented. So, could it be the case because there's not that many different styles in the leadership positions that, the Greens, for example, is like, well, I could never get there because there isn't anybody like me. I mean, that's one rationale. That could be one way of
could be
thinking
the
about
case. Absolutely. As mentioned before, there's probably not one answer. Sweden is a little bit of a. Uh, I mean, I worked all over Europe. I've probably worked all over the northern hemisphere, I would say, but mostly Europe. And I can tell Sweden is different in good ways and in bad ways. Here, anybody can be a leader, even if you're really stupid and really dumb. You can actually be a leader. Not saying that hasn't happened anywhere else in the world, obviously. But the thing is, here you can be, well, if you talk about the disc profiles, red, yellow, green, or blue, or any combination you can come up with, because of competence and because you know the right people. Well, that differs. Here we have a lot of green leaders as well, a lot of blue leaders as well. Uh, why is it different? Well, the difference is in every other nation in Europe that I have visited, I can see, as I do this analysis, I can actually get the record straight here. I can actually see the statistics. Red and blue are dominant colors when it comes to leadership, meaning task orientation, not so much into emotional stuff and the soft things, and the messy stuff about feelings and things, and people going on having babies and having to deal with all these things, family issues. No, I'm here to do my job, and I can see this in all other countries but Sweden. Why is that? Do we have a different culture? In a way, we have. The good thing is diversity within leadership is actually pretty well developed in Sweden. The downside is obvious. We bring in people who shouldn't be there, maybe even more. We are much into resonating and discussing and collaborating, and having another discussion. And sometimes we have a meeting about having a meeting, and we are kind of slow. But when it's all set, we're ready to go. So the process of let's say putting everything in order and getting on track is slowish, I would say, compared to the UK or Germany or just Denmark, one of our closest neighbors, or Finland. They say, what has to be done? That and that. Okay, let's do it. And bam, they're done. So not in Sweden. We have to talk about it and we have to discuss it. So that's a downside to it. The more diversity you bring into the conference room, the more discussions and the more ideas and the more strange, and blurrier it gets. You need a really good leader to bring everything together and to sort of form it into something useful. Okay, there the solution is. So it's good to have all kinds of, let's say, all kinds of positions, all kinds of views, which you get when you mix all the colors and all the drivers as well. But it can be a bit confusing if you make people really talk and bring their view to the table and present it in a good way. It's going to take some time to solve the issue.
It's
So,
true.
so
Yeah, what you're
yeah.
saying is that there's different requirements of a leader depending on the situation. And I see that within companies, for example. So, when you go from the startup phase to the growth phase to then, something that's already established, traditional, which is more about maintaining the status quo, the requirements of the leaders change, which is the reason why quite often you see different types of people, founders, for example, stepping down or stepping aside to introduce somebody who is a CEO who will take the company to the next stage. And, when you're talking about, the Reds dominating currently, well, maybe this is for the situations when you really need to get things done. It's almost like at any cost, you just need to get this done and fast. And, it doesn't really matter who you step on, because actually, ultimately, the business as a whole will benefit. Is just there will be some casualties along the way. So perhaps this is the kind of leaders that we have been seeing quite a lot through history, and what we are facing in quite aggressive cultures. But I wonder if that will change depending on what the requirements will be going forward, where collaboration, especially now we're entering the internet, digital, data age, where we require more collaboration, not just within our organizations, but across as well. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
This is really interesting. It's highly interesting because every time I hear somebody saying, this is how you should lead your organization, this is what a leader should be. Well, I'm saying to myself, well, sometimes and sometimes not. The tricky part with leadership is nobody can say this is the best leader, because it depends on so many factors. It depends on the leader, him or herself. It depends on what kind of people you're supposed to be leading. If you are, a really simplified example, if you are the strong red leader and you're there to lead 10 other strong red people, I mean, conflict after conflict after conflict after conflict. Maybe that could be good, could be dealt with, but still, it's not going to be efficient at all. It just doesn't work that way. A lot of individuals, who are running in every direction, they hate to being told what to do. How are we going to pull that one off? Well, you're not. So should you be a red leader, a natural leader? Well, sometimes, and sometimes not. I think it was the World Health Organization 10 years ago who said they did some sort of assessment all over the EU, and they said that 15% of our population are leaders and 85% are followers. I don't remember where I read it, but I would like to get my hands on that, because it tells you something. I'm not saying yes, that's true, but I am saying it puts you on track in some parts, because again, when you have the wrong people in a top management position, you can't achieve the best out of your organization. Uh, Sometimes in bad times you need strong leaders, people who can point with a full hand and say, do this, do that. We have to, everybody have to, do their best now, work really hard. I mean, during wartime and everything, you need somebody who's crystal clear, who doesn't dare to actually, to make an omelette and so on and so forth. And but it doesn't work in good times, maybe, because everybody knows what they're doing. Nobody needs to do this. So if you tell people you have to do this, I'm already doing it, you're going to annoy them as hell. So technical term, sorry. So there's not one way to do it. The only way to have one person throughout the whole economical cycle would probably to have some sort of chameleon kind of male female hybrid person, probably with all kind of personality traits within, I almost said itself, because it doesn't sound like a human at all. I haven't met that individual. If it is, if that person exists, it's probably a woman. I would say probably a woman, because I
Why do you
think
say
there are
that?
more, well, I think women have a broader perspective. They have more imagination, actually, I would say. I can't say it's true statistically, but that's according to my own experience. Men are more focused on one or two things. Women are more into seeing what's in the, in over here and over there. So therefore they have to deal with many small things that a man might miss, actually.
Why do you think that is?
This is I already regret I said it, because it's a minefield of problems for me waiting ahead. But I think it is because I do not believe men and women are identical. I think women in general, I mean, of course, there's a great overlap. If you look at the curve, of course, there's always a great overlap. But I think women have they have strengths not so many men have. So some of the best leaders I have met are obviously women. They can really deal with high and low and back and forth and left and right. They can really be all over the place and do a really good job. Maybe it is because I don't know. I'm not a neuroscientist. Maybe the female brain is more advanced. I don't know. I do not claim that to be the case. What I am saying is I'm pondering these things because I've seen it
Mm.
too many times not to notice it. Why is it? Maybe some research could tell us, or is it because I don't know? I really can't tell.
I have a
Uh,
theory, and I wonder if there are any studies around that. And I think because men have been in, we're talking about the work situation, really. I think because when we're discussing creativity or imagination, I think a lot of the times it's to do with operating in some kind of a work environment. And let's face it, women have only entered the workforce not that long ago. And my theory is that because men are used to operating in a certain way, they don't really have to think. They just go ahead and they focus on the things they need to do. They don't really need to read the room. And I think for women, when they enter that, because they are more of the outsiders, before you kind of step in and say something, you need to kind of read the room, understand what's going on, who is the one who's setting the pattern here. And I think as a result, that has led to women potentially, and this is a theory, potentially to having to be a lot more creative and to think of different ways to stand out, because you're not a man, you haven't been in that environment for that long. So you have to think of a different way to approach the situation and also to read the room. So that's just a thought. I don't know what your
it's
thoughts are
interesting,
about
and I think you're onto something there. But I can only tell you my observations, and as I'm not a social scientist myself, I'm a behaviorist, which isn't the same thing actually. So, but anyways, it's interesting. And your question was, well, what was the original question actually?
that. Yeah, we kind of got off on the
So
on a tangent.
I,
We're
I
talking,
think we did.
yeah, I think we're talking about different leaders required for different situations and different stages of the business. Um, but actually, asking for a friend, say you are probably a very, established dominant red. You enter a situation where you are required to assess the situation of the business and strategize, and to also understand, how the different pieces move together. It's an established business, but it requires some change. But you're noticing things that are just not working, and surrounded by you probably quite a lot of idiots by your interpretation. How do you deal with that situation? How do you make the change? Because you're new in that business, you see things are not working, you want to say being direct, but perhaps there are not that many reds, but you feel you're getting a sense that you're probably stepping on a lot of toes. Any tips?
This friend of yours, is this person okay with stepping on people's toes?
Good question. I think yes.
Well, in that case, just accept the fact that there will be some toe stepping. The good part of the red leadership is, to be honest, their willingness to take, let's say, unpopular decisions. Unpopular decisions. That's one of the more trickier leadership skills, I would say. You're not there to make everybody your buddy. You're not there to be liked or to be loved or anything. You're there to do a job, and sometimes you have to disappoint your team, your group, your corporation, your organization, whatever it is. Sometimes you have to take decisions that people will dislike and maybe even leave you for taking them. And the red factor is good there because they usually don't, and the blue factor as well, as they are not there to make friends. They are not there to, let's say, they don't dig so deep into the relationships, not meaning they don't like people, that's not the point, but they will always focus on the task itself. They will always have the task in their sort of top of mind. So therefore they will do the job. I think it's about self-insight. I mean, we're talking a lot about red here, and well, of course, I can understand why we do that. But the thing is, if you have a yellow leader who is more than the red one driven to be popular, yellow people likes to be popular, likes to be well thought of. They like to be, in the center of things and using their team as their audience while they tell anecdotes and interesting, inspiring stories. And when they ask, we are going there, we are standing on the top of the mountain. Can you see us there? Conquering the world. And everybody in the team would say, well, how did we get there? How will this happen? Well, don't be so problem oriented, right? Just trust me. Uh, and nothing's going to happen because nobody knows what to do. Nobody knows. The red person is much more clear. Say, okay, we have to, roll up our sleeves here and do the dirt job ourselves, and I will be there with you, because red people work really hard and yellow people talk a lot. So that's just one difference. I think self-awareness, again, I'm repeating myself, but self-awareness is the key, regardless the color, regardless your driver, probably, regardless or your whatever it is that you're focusing on. If it's gender, if it's religion, if it's background, if it could be anything. If you are self-aware and you realize this is where I am, but I am going over there, then you can tweak yourself and you can sort of make it better. But again, you can't violate your own personality too much either. You have to accept there are things that you can't do. You cannot achieve anything. Your mother lied, I'm sorry to say. You can't be anything in the world. Maybe you can be much, much more than you think, but you can't be anything. If you are 175 centimeters tall, you will not play in the NBA, in the basketball league. Again, you can work in a submarine, which the guy in the NBA can't do. And that is just that kind of planet. Sometimes we have to accept it. I would like to be, I have coached, let's say, blue within the IT industry. There's a lot of blue people because they're good with numbers and they understand the technologies and everything, and they're really good, and they can work really, really long on the same detail for weeks, months, maybe. They're really good, and sometimes they pop up and all of a sudden they're managing a team of 500 people, and they come to me and say, okay, I have to hold this presentation. I have to present this and that, and I've never been on a stage, and this is really scary, but I like to learn, could you please coach me into doing that? So I do that. And they can deliver a really well-prepared speech, but they don't have the presence a yellow person has even when he gets out of bed. Sometimes it is just the way it is. Can you make the yellow person read the diagram to check the Excel sheets? No, you cannot. He will just, okay, boring, and then off he goes. And be inspiring. Sometimes we have to accept we are not the same. Some people dislike that information. Sounds strange, but we are not similar, all of us. We have more similarities than we have differences, but the differences can be really, really big. And sometimes we have to accept it. There are things in life I would like to do. I realize it's going to take me so much hard work. So why not develop things where I have some natural talent at least? Not saying you shouldn't try new things, not saying that, but sometimes we have to accept we can't be everywhere at the same time. Am I only confusing you now, or?
Not at all, not at all. I'm just listening because I am just picking up on some anecdotes from your book about how different people interact with each other. And clearly the person I spend the most time with is my husband. And I'm a red and he's predominantly a yellow. And reading the interaction between those two is just, I was just laughing the whole time. I was just like, look, come over here, let me read it to you. And, it goes in one ear and out the other, clearly. But also just in terms of, someone who's very, very happy, very outgoing, talking, and I started noticing also, when we be sitting at a party and he'll be talking and someone asks a question and it will be directed to me, for example, or to somebody else, but yet he kind of picks up on that. And then where we clash, where we get to, when we get to some sort of a conflict is when our dominant personality traits kind of go stratospheric. So when I'm stressed and I'm trying to get things done and I just want to have give like one word directives to him, it's like it's impossible for him. Like he needs it to be, I don't know, I guess more, I don't know how you describe it, but softer, more engaging, more I don't know, I can't put the word to it, what you were saying about, but he needs to feel valued rather than just be told like, look, this is not working. For me, it just makes sense for me to say, well, this is not working and this is how it can be fixed. Whereas from his perspective, it's, well, if it's broken, that means I somehow had something to do with it. And now I feel bad about myself. I need to be uplifted and to feel like I'm being valued. And those two things just like are at odds. And I see that happening within a work environment as well. And that's not just, yellows are the ones I tend to get on with the most, as well as the reds, obviously, but how I interact with the greens and the blues, which is also kind of a fascinating aspect. So my question to you is, I walk into a party or full of strangers, and how can I judge who is who in terms of their personality traits? Any tips or tricks?
Oh, that tiny little piece of advice. Well, the first you can do is to spot the yellow ones, which is kind of easy because they are in the center of a circle of people telling the stories about when they went to the Caribbean and there was a storm and the boat, broke down or did I go by airplane, because but they are good storytellers and they will laugh louder than everybody else. So those are easy to spot. Um, the red ones are mostly looking like you and I are looking now, sort of like this.
Blankly.
What am I doing here? They enjoy the company maybe, but they're standing there, and talking about themselves. Oh, that's kind of messy. I don't want to do that. The blue ones and the green ones you will probably find a little bit to the side, too small screen, a little bit to the side, at the walls with with the glass in their hand, observing everybody else, taking notes, maybe not taking notes, obviously not taking notes, but maybe internal imaginary
Mental
notes. The
note.
blue ones is
Mhm.
looking, and when you ask, the best way you can figure the colors out is by asking questions. Ask open-ended questions. Okay, so who do you know here? The red one will say, well, I know the host, obviously. Okay, we're buddies since, kindergarten. He won't ask you who you know because he doesn't care. The yellow people, if you ask a yellow person, who do you know? Oh, I know everybody. He or she is going to say, I know him and her, and I had, let me tell you a brilliant story. When I met those people and the family over there, and who are you, by the way? They won't listen to the answer, but it's going to be very friendly and smiley. You can see the smile. Not going to be this, but it's going to be like this. But they're going to make you feel welcome, and they're going to make you feel positive and energized. They are excellent at this. If you ask the green ones, who do you know? Oh, I'm old friends with the host's sister, and they let me come, and I'm really happy. The voice going to be a bit toned down, a bit softer. And if you ask who do you know here, and it's going to be a blue person, well, he might just point them or him. That's it. And he won't ask you who you know because, like the reds, he's not interested, doesn't care really. And this wasn't very scientific, but the most thing that you can do is I got this question on, I think it was on LinkedIn, perhaps. Somebody asked me, is it the question that can tell me which color a person has? Well, the point is sometimes it's a combination. Most of the times it's a combination of two colors. But of course you can get some answers. I'm still fiddling with the answer. Which question is the one that will open it up? I don't know. Probably tell me about yourself, or tell me about your future. What's your vision for your life? And see what happens. And you will get plenty of leads. Some will say, my vision is just plain stupid. And some will say, I thought you'd never ask, and now I'm going to tell you. And you can see what happens. Open-ended questions are the best. Make people talk, and then you can make your analysis. It requires some training. But if I could learn this, anyone can learn this. That is just the way it is. If I could get my head around this, everybody can. Trust me.
What advice would you give to leaders choosing who they have as the leaders below them?
Well, the politically correct answer would be choose somebody who is not exactly like you. Choose somebody who will challenge you in a moderate way, at least. Somebody who is willing to say, have you thought this through? Is this a really good decision? Can we talk about this? Again, here in Sweden, that is actually really, really common. Anybody can go to the CEO and say, I need to bring something up with you. Actually, even in really big organizations, if you do that in Poland or in Finland, they're going to look at you like you're an idiot. To be honest, you don't have entrance here. You don't have access to this person. Go away. But people who dare to speak up are the ones you will be looking for, and they probably have some red in them, maybe some blue. You don't want to. It depends on where you are in the cycle, obviously. If you are looking for people that can challenge you, you're not going to get that from green people, obviously, because they don't like conflicts. They don't like disagreements. They will just tell you, I think like you do. I totally agree. Totally resonates. Yeah, you're right. Because it's much more comfortable to do that. So you won't get the uncomfortable truth from them. Yellow people can also deliver uncomfortable truths, but they will be more concerned how you will see them afterwards. They need to stay popular within your circle, so to speak. But again, it depends. I mean, a team is, as I mentioned before, my strong belief is a team is built by the best possible diversity, the best possible variety of people. I strongly believe that, but you have to have a really, really talented leader to lead that team. You have to be able to deal with reds, yellows, greens, and blue, and the combinations. If you have a combination of blues and yellows, in the same individual, that's a tricky one to deal with. If you have lots of yellow people and some blue people in the team, you need to be aware these people are constantly conflicting, but only 50% of them knows this, and that's the blue ones. The yellow ones never pay attention, so they want to understand that they are causing a conflict. And if you know you need somebody to lead that team, you need somebody to be, well, let's say, to be willing to step in and say, okay, guys, this isn't working. We can do better now. Shape up, let's talk about the unpleasantness that is in the team. That's a really blurry answer because there are no crystal clear answers. What the resume says, I couldn't care less. I need to understand what kind of person is this. I would have a long conversation about conflicts and disagreements and problems and bad economy and everything, and see what they are talking about. How they present themselves to me. I really can't say go green or go yellow or anything like that because it's too much of a simplification. I would say look at the drivers instead. Look at somebody who's always striving to achieve the result that you're looking for. That would probably be an extroverted person, maybe a blue one also, but most of all, you need a driver that is practical, economical. You need somebody, and economical, it can be money, but it doesn't have to be money. It can also be some other kind of result. People who are very driven. I met lots of red people who does not have that driver, meaning they are really crystal clear and really, dominant, but they don't go for the result. They're there for some other reason. Maybe they have a social driver, meaning they like to help people and avoid conflict, so they can send people home for being stressed out. You better go home and take a rest. That's what you're gonna do. In the red dominant way, they send people home to rest, which is really that freaks people out. People can't get that. So the drivers are more important, I would say, and there's tools to find those out as well. So yeah.
You're talking about having the diversity within the team. Is there a perfect ratio of all the different types?
No, it isn't. It isn't. You probably need a bit of everything. I mean, statistically, it's gonna be a problem because you have most green and least red. Less than 10% of our society, society in the industrialized world, let's call it, 9.5% reds, 46% greens, and then you have an equal amount of yellows and blues. I can't recall. I think we have a little bit more blues than we have yellows. So if you're going to build every team, with two of each, you're going to run out of all kinds of well, you get the point. I mean, I would say the diversity you probably have. I mean, in a team, of course, you have to look at experience. You have to look at competence. I understand that. I'm not saying what's in the resume doesn't matter. But when it comes to complicated things, I agree that later. I need to understand who's in front of me. But when it comes to if you have a red person in the team, he or she will always say, "What should we do?" And the yellow person will ask, "Who shall do it?" And the green people will ask, "Well, how it's supposed to be done? I hope it's not in a hurry." And the green people will ask how, and the blue people will say, "Why are we doing this?" And that gives you answer to 4 important questions. If you can train your team to ask all these 4 questions, it doesn't matter so much who's in the team. You can make the yellow person ask what is supposed to be done here, and make them go a little bit to the red side, let's say. You can train the green people to go a little bit yellowish or maybe yellowish and maybe a little bit bluish as well, but you can't make them red. You shouldn't. Never violate somebody's personality. That's not going to work. It's going to stress them completely out. They can actually get physically ill by that, trying to be something that they're not. So if you can, I mean, in the short term, within, let's say, a couple of hours during a certain meeting, you can make the red person a really, really good listener. If you train them to be good listeners, and if you tell them this is really, really important, you need to pay attention. You do not have all the answers, even though it feels like it. You actually have to gain more intelligence from other people. You have to do that, and you can make them practice this. So then the red factor isn't so important anymore, because they can also go a little bit green, if you know what I mean. The best listeners are the green ones. Comes natural. They hear everything you say and they will remember all you said, especially the bad stuff. Especially the bad stuff. Especially if it's something bad about the green person, they will never forget this. Never. It's
And won't
fire.
tell you,
They won't tell you. You just see, and
but
you will
you
say,
know there's something going on.
it's a bit frosty between you. And say, are we having some issues between us? No, no, no. Everything is fine. So no problem. No problem. Or rather, no problem that you can go for body language. No problem whatsoever. So we're good. We're good. It's kind of fascinating to see how body language can reveal things. But again, you have to pay attention. You have to be there. You have to be present, regardless if it's a team of 2 or if it's a team of 202. Doesn't matter. You have to be there. Never try to lead more people than you can actually wrap your head around and understand them. You're not leading a team. You're leading 10 individuals who happens to be in the same room at the same time. That is not the same thing as a team. Everybody wants to be treated as an individual. Now we're going completely cliche-ish here. I understand that, but we have to remember this. Nobody wants to be seen as a guy in the group. John wants to be called John, not, hey, IT boy, over there. It doesn't work that way. And we know this. We understand it. We are modern people. But still, in the middle of the battlefield, people tend to forget it, and then they just go by gut feeling. So the red people will continue to step on toes. The yellow leaders will talk too much. The green ones will just disappear. Try to be one with the wall there, and the blue ones will just dig into the Excel sheets and just vanish from the face of the earth. So you have to make people still adapt and still adjust to each and every situation. That is why, at the same time as you yourself has to do the same thing, you have to also adapt to each and every situation. And that is why leadership is so extremely complicated. It is so hard to be a good leader in every kind of situation. I have not met that perfect individual. Maybe he or she exists. I would like to shake that person's hand, to be honest. But it is really, really hard, and there is not one way to do it. I'm repeating, but this is what I do. This is my field, and it fascinates me still after 30 years. It still fascinates me how complicated it is and how good it can be when you really, when you start paying attention actually and be there in the present, not only physically but emotionally and psychologically and everything. It's really cool when you make it work.
I think when you understand yourself and how you're perceived by others, that is not just one vision. So it's not just one way of being, that you can be perceived by different people in slightly different ways. And then when you are trying to communicate and get your message across, knowing how to adjust what you say and how you say it to make sure that that message gets to the person in the right way. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that I got from your book. And it's the hardest thing to do because you're so trained or so habitual in how you deliver things, to then sort of pause and think, and then to adjust yourself. That takes a lot of practice and a lot of willpower. But I think just the first step of understanding that there are differences and what those differences are, and which points that you clash with somebody or when you work well with someone, to then be able to work with that and make minor improvements to, yeah, to make your message be delivered in the correct way. And that's the biggest takeaway from your book for me. What do you wish to achieve with your work?
Excellent question. What do I wish to achieve with my work? The truth is, well, again, I don't have an answer. What I wish to do and to reach as many as I can is making people, well, of course, self-aware, to make people see, this is me. This is what people see when I present myself to the world. And make people get this aha moment, and maybe also achieving a couple of oh no moments. I like to sort of hand out tough love when I coach people, because, and most people can take it because they know I'm on their side. I'm here for you, not for me. So I don't have to do this, but I do it because I love to see the development, the individual development in each and every character. I would like to help more people make some kind of plan with their lives, some kind of to make them, let's say, I talked about it when it come to the young Thomas, when I was a really young man and I had no plan, I had no awareness about anything. I didn't think. That's probably the right way to express it. I didn't think, I just was, which for me now is really, really scary. As I realize I'm getting older, I realize how many years I just wasted. Well, not wasted, but spent on things that didn't matter very, very much, because I was, of course, I've changed a lot. My awareness is I would say pretty high when it comes to several things, but I had the same opportunities then as I have now. I had the same strengths. I mean, I was sort of the same personality, sort of the same guy. I just wasn't thinking. I wasn't planning. I wasn't looking for answers. I wasn't trying to talk to smart people, experienced people. I wasn't trying to learn. I didn't get a coach myself until I was 36, 37, something. A really good one, a lady who she made some omelets with me, I can tell you. She just smacked me on the head verbally and said, well, what the hell are you doing, buddy? And I said, oh, I don't know. I can see that, she said, pay attention, sort of kind of harsh person. Really helped me, because I'm tough to deal with. It's hard to make me believe something that I've decided not to believe in. It's hard to change my mind from an outer perspective. I'm not saying it as a good thing. I think it's a problem. Still, I'm struggling with myself. But I would like to help people, as many people as I have time to help, to, let's say, achieve the same insight. You can do much, much more. You can achieve much, much more. I'm not talking about building the best possible career or making a lot of money. It could be that, because some people get stuck, in the hamster wheel as well. They're kind of just going around because this is how you plan your career, because that's what my father told me. I had to be a doctor. I had to be a lawyer. Well, no, you don't. Find your, well, let's say, find your inner why, find the reason why you are here, and make something that matters. I would like more people to think, to really feel they matter, that they are contributing to the society in a way that we can use. And it's not always in a lovely, fancy, charming way, and everybody's going to stand there, and put their hands together. Sometimes they're going to hate you for it, but you will matter. You will contribute with something that is valuable, that is worthwhile. Do something good with your life. It could be leadership, but it could be something else. I'm coaching this guy now. He's 42. He has this brilliant career. He's being a partner in this advertising big corporation. And he said, this is really good, and you should just see my they fetch me with the limousine these days, and it feels really wow. And I asked him, well, what's the best with it? Well, it's to show my brother how far I have reached. And I could see something in his face, and he said, I said, do you like your job? And then he just looked into the camera and said, no, I don't. I hate it. I hate the task I had to do. I hate the customers. I don't believe in this. I hate my boss, the CEO of this company. He's a complete maniac. Maybe he's a narcissist, maybe even a psychopath. I do not like it. So I said, what do you want to do? So we are kind of on that journey now. And sometimes that is actually the answer. You have to, it's, another cliche, you have to be true to yourself in a sense, right? My ambition is to make people be more true and more honest with themselves, regardless of where it takes them. Usually it is something, it's somewhere beautiful. Sometimes it is, well, something else, something really, really tough, something really, really, really hard. But hey, we have to make a difference, all of us, don't we? What's the point of being on this planet if we don't matter, if we don't make a difference in some way, if we don't contribute to the society in one way or another, if we just exist, perish on the sofa binging Netflix? For me, that's not the point with life. I'm going to put myself on high horses here, but for me, has to be something else. And too many people are wasting year after year not doing something worth doing. Wouldn't you agree?
Totally. Totally.
And it's sad. It's sad. I think it's sad. Everybody can make more out of their lives, finding a meaning, let's say. Because when you find it, it's, oh, wow, wow, this is so great. That's what I'm aiming for.
You couldn't have said it. You said it in such a beautiful way in terms of getting people to discover themselves, think deeply. We're all operating in sort of in habits, things that we almost inherited from childhood, things that your father, your mother, your brother, your society tells you that you're supposed to be doing, or how you're supposed to be acting, what you should be and shouldn't be doing. And we quite often reach a stage where, sometimes it happens earlier when you've discovered what you want, but sometimes it takes a while to get to a point when you're like, I don't know what it is, but something's not working. I'm somehow stuck. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. And then, there's a process of, trying to kind of figure that out. And it's hard to dig deep. It's hard to, to stop watching Netflix, to finally be alone with your thoughts and what is true to you and what's bothering you. And I think it's with coaches that sometimes we can make a massive difference, like with you.
Absolutely, and I think it's there's so many things stealing your focus these days. It's hard to stay focused and it's hard to stay in the present. I mean, if you're in your early 20s, don't know what to do with your life, well, that might be okay. I mean, I for sure didn't know. When you're 30, it's good to start the process. When you're 40, ooh, speaking about habit-driven people, we have sort of we have sort of almost, let's say, frozen in our identities, and then to break loose and to change direction, it is so hard. I think young people need guidance, and I am a mentor for a couple of young people beginning their careers, and that's usually the most fascinating thing, because they don't know, they have less, I mean, they don't have the standard prerequisites for going into the ditch, because they say, okay, teach me, tell me what to do, you know. So I say, well, so what's energizing you today, and all this stuff. And so they don't have to replace everything. They can just fill themselves with good stuff. Sometimes I can help them, sometimes I can help them think. Sometimes I can tell them concretely, do this, don't do that, because that's just plain stupid. Don't fall for that. Okay, oh, I didn't know. Oh, thank you. And sometimes, but when I talk to somebody in their, let's say in my age, it's much harder, much harder. When you're stuck in the wrong direction, again, going full speed ahead in completely no direction whatsoever, that's bad. And the older you get, that's the sad truth. And people don't like to hear this, but that is actually the truth. The older you get, the harder it's going to be to change your direction.
Well, it's like a
And
fork, isn't it? The further you've diverted to a path, the more you walk, the distance between where if you've taken a different direction, it gets wider and wider and wider. And one of the things you said about, what do you want? And I think that's a question that we don't ask ourselves enough. Like, what do you actually want? Instead of the things that you're supposed to do and, running on autopilot, it's like, what do you want? And how do you see your future? And I think partly we're wired that way. Our brain is wired to look out for things that we don't want to do, or, avoid danger, rather than actually think of the direction that we want to go to. And that question alone, like, what do you want, is really powerful and very frustrating as well. But it's so important to ask that.
It is. As you mentioned it yourself, you said it yourself, our brains are wired that way. Stay away from the dangers. That's how it is. So make sure you know what you don't want. Make sure you know what's the wrong direction. So that maybe that is why it's so hard to find the right direction, to have this positive, let's say, openness to where you might be. It's hard for people to say, okay, what's your life going to look like? The best life for you. What's that going to look like? Most people can't tell. Most people don't know. When I deal with leaders, when I give workshops for managers in order to make them leaders, it could be 20 people in the room, and I say, okay, how many of you know why you are a manager? I would say about 1% can say, this is why. The rest, oh, I don't know. I would figure it out. I didn't get away in time when the question popped, For some, it's the perks, and some answers are pretty okay. But most people have to ponder this and really think it through. Why am I in this chair with this hat on today? And when it comes to your whole career, or maybe even your whole life, I mean, I read somewhere people plan their vacations more than they plan their lives, and that is probably the truth. And it's a lot of scary thought, wouldn't you say?
Mm-hmm.
It's probably correct, which is really, really frustrating. And again, we can do better. Everybody can be more. Not everybody can be a Nelson Mandela or somebody like that, but we can be more than we are today. And sometimes it is by leading people in hard times. I mean, look at the world as we live in today. Everybody's focused on what is happening, and of course, it's scary. It's really scary.
Mm-hmm.
We need people who dare to stand up and say, okay, I can help. I can do something. I can do something really good here. And we need those guys and girls, plenty of them.
Mm-hmm. Thomas, it's such a amazing conversation with you. I mean, I could talk to you for hours and hours and go into the detail of, how all the different types of people interact with each other. But I took so much away from that, and really reflecting on that a lot. And I'm so pleased to have you on the show, and to talk to you, and to hear your views about people and communication, and really making people's lives much better and more meaningful. So I really appreciate you being here. What's the best way of people to find you or to reach out to you?
The best way to reach out to me is to contact me via email, info at surroundedbyidiots.com. That's the easiest way. Yes, I know. That's my website. Well, the website is surroundedbyidiots.com, and you can see everything that I am doing. I am social media Thomas Erikson writer, but if you want to reach out to me, the safest way is that email address. And I'm looking for assignments all the time. So when I see the right person, I like to collaborate.
Thank you, Thomas. And I love how we're dressed the same today as well. We're the same personality type, and more or less in the same outfit too. Great minds.
It goes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us here on Anatomy of a Leader. What did you discover in this episode? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next week.